Hey, what's up, children? So, today I want to talk about supply and demand. Okay, so it's a relatively easy concept, right? But still, let's kind of like understand the basics before we dig in a little deeper and talk about why this supply demand equation, even though it's simple to understand, many people just can't seem to get it right. Okay, so what is supply and demand? So, basic economics 101. So, when supply is high and everything else is the same, right, remains a constant, the price will drop. When supply is low, right, the price usually goes up. And the inverse is true for demand. When demand is high, price goes up. Demand is low, price goes down. So that's kind of like the basics of supply and demand. And most people intuitively they understand it because when you go to grocery stores, when you see sometimes when there's a flood of a certain ingredient, the price of that ingredient will drop. And when sometimes certain ingredients are missing or maybe there's a bird flu and stuff like that, the price of chicken will go up, right? Because there's not enough chicken to go around for us to eat. So this is stuff that I think most people will understand. But when you take things a little further, right now, let's talk about the education system. At least this will be relevant to the context that I'm in, right, Singapore. So when I see all around me, I mean, when I was growing up in my younger years, the advice that was given to me is study hard in school, get good grades, find a good job, right? It's like very progressive, right? Study hard, do well for your things here, your spelling, your exams, meet your exams, final year exams, get good grades eventually, and then get a good job. And that advice could work, right? Maybe in the 1960s, in the 1970s, where a lot of people just don't have this paper qualification, and if they want to promote you to a manager or whatsoever, they want someone with paper qualification, someone who can, follow instructions, right? So doing well in exams, right, typically would translate you to being someone who can pretty much follow instructions. That's how we do well in exams. Problem is, in today's day and age, right, in the 1990s, 2000, and even till today, maybe not the 1990s, right, okay, maybe the 1990s. I was born in the 80s, right, 1990s, 2000, and even till today, this advice is still being shoved down the throat of children. And what's the problem with this? But before we talk about the problem, right, I'm not sure about the countries around the world. In Singapore, if you go to any mall, I think most mall, there's a lot of tuition centers out there teaching you in English, maths, science, all the different type of academic subjects. Sometimes it's even a component of a academic subject. So in Chinese, they have something back then with what we call it, was it a 作文, basically composition for Chinese. So you're not learning Chinese, you're learning a particular component in Chinese that's being tested for exams, and they have specific tuition for it. That's how extreme it goes, right? It's like, to put things in context for those of my international audience, right, or international children, it's like you're studying math, but it's not a math tuition, it's an algebra tuition. So you basically only have tuition on algebra. That's how far things have taken here in Singapore. Now, what's the problem with this? In my opinion, it's very simple. Times have changed, and many parents, they adopt this 1960s, 1970s strategy. And in today's environment, right, we are a lot more well-to-do in terms of the income of a family. So everybody's sending their kids to tuition. So back then, when you get a degree in the 1960s or 1970s, you're like kind of like 1 in 100, 1 in 500. But these days, when you get a degree, you are like 499 out of 500. Everybody has a degree. And if that's not enough, right, some parents would then tell their kids, don't stop at getting a degree. Go for a master's, go for a PhD. And that's what people are doing. They just kind of like study further and further without realizing that those paper qualifications are not going to necessarily translate into real-world application. You may not get a job, right, with a master's because maybe your salary expectation may be too high relative to what a company is willing to pay. So can you see where this supply-demand equation is out of whack? Children going to school, getting higher education, getting a degree. What happens to the supply equation in the job market? Supply of these candidates goes up. And when supply goes up, what happens to the price? What happened to the price which now translate into your salary? Well, naturally it gets pushed down, right? Because the employer knows there's so many of you out there, so many of you reigners out there with all the same paper qualification, having business degree from UK, US, Australia, whatnot, all degree in business. I can slowly take my pick, right, to choose the ones that I know I want, because the supply is so much. I mean, supply is so much, I know I don't have to pay much, because if you're not willing to accept the salary, someone else will, and they have the same credentials as you. So this is the first issue that I see about the supply and demand equation, which intuitively most people understand, but when it comes to the education side of things, in Singapore especially, it just doesn't quite seem to get to their head. Yeah? And of course, this is not just apparent in the Singapore education. I think in relationships as well, this supply and demand, it's apparent. For example, where is the supply and demand factors, right, when you're going after girls, right? So I had to learn quite a few painful lessons, right, when chasing after girls, because no one taught me, right, those Hollywood movies that you see, those stuff, right, those are bullocks, right? It doesn't work. So if you think about this, right, when you give a girl attention, right, meaning you shower her with love and affection, you're being there for her, messaging her constantly, that is attention to the girl, and that is a form of currency. You can imagine that if you give a girl too much attention, what happens? Supply goes up. And when supply goes up, what happens to the value? What happens to the price? Price goes down. So if you are going after a girl and you shower her with too much attention, what happens to the value of you, the guy that's going after her? Well, in the eyes of the girl, your value is going down. See where I'm coming from? So the harder you try, it seems that you're kind of like pushing her further and further away, because she's thinking, man, this guy is so needy. Man, this guy is always readily available. Right? I don't have to pick him now, because I know he's always be there for me. So your value in the girl's eyes is just kind of like going down lower and lower. So how do you invert that? How do you increase your value? Well, for starters, if you like the girl, don't give her too much attention. If you can insult her, I'm being serious. I mean, don't throw her those, very mean insults, but maybe those playful insults. Just insult her, give her less attention. Oh, your dress today is, it's not the prettiest thing I've seen, right, so far today, and stuff like that. Insult her. When you give her less attention, right, when your attention on her is scarce, supply is low. And when supply is low, what happens to the price? Well, assuming all else equals, or assuming that she might like you, your price will naturally go up. I'm not saying guarantee you will, because if the girl doesn't like you from the start, right, you can scold her, insult her, nothing's going to change. But if there's a chance that things could happen and your attention on her is low, supply is low, your value is likely to go up. And that's not all. When your value goes up, right, we human have this thing called FOMO, fear of missing out. When someone sees that you as a person, your value is kind of going up higher and higher, other girls will naturally be attracted to you. And then now the demand is going up as well. And then what happens to your value? Your value goes up even higher. So with low supply and high demand, what happens to your value? Clearly your value is going to go up, and you can pretty much choose any girl, right, that you think will be a good fit for you. Yeah, and it's not just guy going after girls going after guy. It's the same concept as well, but at least be aware of the games, right, that they could be playing on you. Yeah, so this is how the supply and demand dynamic work, not just in the everyday buying grocery from the supermarket. It's apparent in the education system. It's apparent, right, when in relationships, right, going after girls, or guys going after girls and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a very simple equation, and I wish most people would kind of like think deeper and don't just look at it at a superficial level. So this kind of like segue or can also be moved on into another topic, which is, I think the title will be called second order thinking, meaning don't just think at a superficial level, think a step deeper, right? Same thing as I've just what I shared with you earlier with regards to the education system and the going after girls as well. Yeah, some of you now might be thinking, so Papa, all right, so Rainer, how, my parents are kind of like, force feeding me down to study hard and stuff like that. But, that's not the way out. So what's the solution? So that would probably be a video for another day, but a few high-level ideas that I can think of is that really you pretty much want to be useful. You want to acquire skills and knowledge that will be relevant 20, 30 years from now. So for example, the stuff that I learned in school till today is irrelevant because the pace of technology have moved so far. Back then I was studying infocom. Don't ask me what I was studying. I'm pretty much studying, I have no freaking idea. I forget everything. I gave back everything to the school, right? I think the day I graduated, right, everything was already given back to the school, yeah? So basically, when you want to be useful, be relevant, right, you want to acquire skills that that will be in demand for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Because if those skills are going to be in demand, then you will always be in demand. Because let's face it, right, you get a degree from a business school, the stuff, the knowledge that you learn, are they still going to be relevant 20, 30 years from now? Those are actually theories, not even practical knowledge. So when I talk about standing out from the crowd, not being part of the herd, you want to acquire skills that are relevant, skills that are practical. So a few that comes to mind. If you can fry an awesome plate of char kway teow, it's a local Singapore dish. Guess what? I think 30 years from now, Singaporeans will still want to eat char kway teow or chicken rice because it's our local food. Is what we grow up on, right? It's so good, it's so oily, boom, mama. So if you can acquire that skill, again, I don't think it's that difficult to figure out. Nowadays, you have YouTube, Google, get the recipes, trial and error. If you can master that awesome plate of char kway teow, that's another way of making a living, besides, chasing after paper qualification. If you can set up one char kway teow, you do well, you can expand to multiple stores. So I'm getting carried away over here, but you get my point. Acquire relevant skills and knowledge that will be useful 20, 30 years from now. Or how about nutrition and fitness? I think 20, 30 years from now, there will still be people who is going to be obese out there, right? So if you're very good at nutrition, you know how to lose weight, you know how to build muscles. I think 30, 40, 50 years from now, that is still a very attractive trait. And if you have that skills, that knowledge, right, and you can impart and teach people, guess what? There will be demand for it. And again, you don't have to worry about going hungry. So that's kind of the angle that I'm coming from. Again, that will probably be a video for another day. But for now, I hope you understand the supply and demand dynamics. Simple concept to understand. But when you dig in a little bit deeper, when you think about the next level, you realize that most people just can't seem to follow it through. So don't be one of them, all right? So whenever in life you are faced with a decision, right? You're thinking of doing something, right? Ask yourself, am I following the herd? Am I doing this right now which will cause my price to go down, which will cause my value to go down? If it's going to happen, okay, you might want to reconsider doing that thing. All right, so with that said, I'll talk to you soon.